Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be starting a three-part video series on mental health. This first video is going to be about me discussing what my goals are for the series, and then just about what mental health is and mental illnesses are in general. The second video I'm going to discuss my personal mental health story, and in the third video I want to talk about what my personal mental illness is and kind of what I go through day to day and stuff like that. So why am I doing this? You might ask yourself. The reason is that back in February, my high school had a Student Wellness Day, and at that we had a keynote speaker who did an activity where he would make a statement. If that statement applied to you, to stand up. He started off pretty basic with things like, if you like this musician, stand up. If you like this TV show, stand up. Things like that. And then he started working into more personal things. Things such as, do you come from a home where your parents are divorced? Do you come from a single parent home? Then he worked into even more personal things, such as, maybe have you suffered physical abuse? Have you ever thought about hurting yourself? Things along those lines. Now, myself and several other teachers stood up for varying statements that applied to them and things along those lines. So, what really hit home, though, was after this, I was approached by some students who wanted to reach out and tell me that, they were happy to know that there were adults who dealt with some of the things they've had to deal with. People that understood some of the problems they've had, and that they felt more comfortable reaching out knowing that. And so I thought to myself, aside from just like, wow, that is powerful. I thought to myself, I've dealt with my own mental illness and my own mental health for years now, and I've not talked about it a lot. And I kind of came to the conclusion that one of the best ways that I might be able to help others as well as kind of just help myself is to discuss this. So, what I'm trying to accomplish with these videos is the fact of, by doing this, I'm hoping to bring awareness to people. I'm hoping to educate people about what mental health and mental illness, what it really is. And then also, to reach out to others who may be dealing with mental illness, that just need somebody to talk to, or just to realize like, hey, there's other people deal with these things, and, they were able to get the help they needed, or whatever it is. So that's kind of why I'm doing this, what my goals are for this. Kind of a nutshell there. So, one thing I want to stress is I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm a high school science teacher. Anything I'm talking about is either based just off my personal experience, or if it's any kind of technical information, it's stuff I've gathered from either the National Institutes of Mental Health or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Both of those websites I've got listed over here. I will also put them in the information for this video so that you can go there if you want to look up stuff about mental health. So let's start with the basics. What is a mental illness? Well, it is a pretty wide-spanning definition in that it applies to any type of mental, behavioral, or emotional disorder that can cause anything from mild to severe impairments of your mental health. And your mental health is basically just how you feel kind of day to day, hour to hour throughout your life. Some days you feel better than other days. You're happier or sadder, or you're just kind of like, ugh, Mondays, or, happy it's Friday, and things like that. So, a mental illness impacts that. And what it does is it can affect your relationships, either your current relationships or how you make relationships with people. It can affect how you deal with anxiety and stress. It can make you sometimes pick unhealthy choices, and basically just affects you in that type of way. And that's kind of why it's so hard for people who deal with mental illnesses to sometimes talk about it, is because it's so different. If you've never been depressed, it's really hard for someone who's been depressed to explain to you what it feels like. If you've never had mania, it's really hard for somebody who's had a manic episode to explain mania to you. So it's very difficult because of the nature in which it affects us. Now, another reason why this is so important is that people with mental illnesses also tend to have some physical health problems as well. Mental illnesses can lead to things like an increased risk of stroke or heart disease. They can also cause an increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. They can lead to obesity or people being too thin. There's a wide range of other physical conditions that can be impacted by a mental illness. So understanding what it is, how it affects you, and things like that can lead not only to just improving your mental health, but also can improve your physical health. Now, something most people I don't think understand is that this is very common. According to the CDC, about 1 in 5 people throughout their life will deal with a mental illness at some point. We know that mental illnesses can be changed over a person's lifetime. So, some instances people can recover. Maybe it's through medication, maybe it's through talk therapy. Sometimes, depending on the circumstances, some people can recover through their own just like strength of will and social network and stuff. If you're really depressed after a family member passed away, maybe you don't need medication or therapy. Maybe just having a close circle, a close social network, and just your own whatever way of dealing with it in a healthy fashion helps you work through that. Other times, you may develop a mental illness due to some factor, like dealing with a life-threatening disease may cause you to develop depression or anxiety and things like that. So mental health can change throughout your life, and because of that, you can develop or recover from certain types of mental illnesses. That being said, there are also some mental illnesses you won't recover from, such as something like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. You can treat the symptoms, but you're not. That's a more lifelong type of illness that you're going to work with. And it is worth pointing out that only about 1 in 25 people who have a mental illness will have a serious mental illness like schizophrenia, like bipolar disorder, or something like major depression. So these are more common. But it doesn't mean that everybody you walk by necessarily has a mental illness. It just means there's probably more people than you originally believed that have it around you. Causes for it vary. It could be anything from adverse conditions in your early life. So maybe you were abused as a child, physically, sexually, verbally. Maybe you suffered some massive trauma that led to this. It could be brought on by health conditions. Say you're dealing with a terminal illness, you might start to feel depressed and anxious, like I said earlier. There are biological factors for some of these diseases. There is familial history that you can look at in some cases, particularly as something in the like bipolar or schizophrenia type areas. There is connections through family history there, so there's some biological connections. Drug and alcohol abuse can lead to this. There are many times people who, say, for example, have smoked for a long period of time throughout their life. Withdrawal can, if they decide to quit, withdrawal can sometimes cause anxiety, can cause depression, things along those lines. So there's that. We know that isolation and loneliness can lead to mental illnesses. So there are many factors. Now, like any type of health condition, many times a mental illness is created or develops, I shouldn't say created, but develops because of multiple factors. It's typically not just one thing. Doesn't mean it can't be, just typically means that it's not just this one incident's caused this. Usually multiple factors kind of play a part into it. The best way I can explain that is if you think of somebody, so let's say we know Jim, and Jim recently had a heart attack. Most times we don't just go, oh, Jim had a heart attack because he ate hamburgers every day. A lot of times we'll go, well, Jim had a heart attack because you remember his dad and his dad's dad, and so on and so forth, they all had heart attacks. Well, you remember also Jim didn't really work out or exercise. Jim ate really badly. Jim was overweight. You know, we usually look and see like, oh, there's these other factors that cause Jim's heart attack. And it's kind of the same thing when we're dealing with a mental illness. There's usually multiple factors. Are there instances where people have a heart attack kind of out of the blue with no real indication? Yes. Are there people who develop mental illnesses because of one traumatic event? Yes. But in most cases, there are multiple factors. And in order to truly understand and help people, we need to understand that there's lots of factors. Now, one final thing I want to talk about here is that when you're dealing with somebody who has a mental illness, so when you're talking to somebody that has a mental illness, they're not a broken person. They're not looking for attention. They're not crazy in the sense of like they're not going to run around and do things. Yes, there are instances where somebody with, say, like a severe schizophrenia or bipolar or something like that can be a danger to others and to themselves. It happens. But the majority of people, again, about 1 in 25 people who have a mental illness are going to be in those severe categories. And even then, it's not likely that those people will then be a danger to others or themselves. It just means that they deal with more illness, a severe illness. Most people just are looking for somebody, occasionally a shoulder to cry on, somebody to work something out. You know, they're anxious and they just need to work it out with somebody, maybe literally physically work it out. Things like that. And once we can kind of understand that these people are just dealing with a health condition, you know, however they're able to handle it, whether it's through medication, therapy, things like that, then we can really start to help people. Because this is a big issue. And a lot of times people don't talk about their mental health because it is kind of this, there's a lot of stigma attached to it. So that's the end of this first video. A few things before we wrap up here real quick. If you or someone you know needs help and it's an emergency, always call 911. If that seems for whatever reason not to be an option, you can always call like the suicide hotline number. I have it here. It's 1-800-273-TALK. It's over here as well. I will also put it in the description of the video. If it's not an emergency, but you're looking to reach out to get some help, you can always contact your local healthcare provider, your health department. Any of those types of resources can help steer you in the direction you may need to go to get the help you need. Talk to somebody. The worst thing you can do is to not talk to somebody. There's probably someone out there that can help you. Other things you can do, again, check out the National Institute of Mental Health's website, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's website on mental health. They got lots of good resources there, lots of good descriptions about different types of mental illnesses, and things along those lines. Finally, if you do know me, even if you don't know me, but in particular if you do know me and know how to reach me easily, you are more than welcome to always contact me as somebody that can help point you in a direction that will get you the help you need, or get the person you know the help they need. So, hope this was informational and educational for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.